Hello, this is Dr. Dan Kohinka. In this video, we are going to address kinship, which is part of the Servant Leadership 2.0 Training and Development Program. Kinship, as I define it, includes 5 behaviors: being forgiving, where, for example, you forgive others who may have engaged you with some sort of negative or harmful behavior; being trusting by openly communicating with others. I'll describe some more details later, but this could be, for example, a teammate of yours that you divulge personal or maybe even some confidential information. You trust that they will use that for good and not for any sort of bad reasons. Being collaborative, working together no matter the circumstances. Maybe someone else has very different political views than you, but you work with them anyways. Being respectful of others by not gossiping. I will discuss the harm of gossiping a little bit later. Finally, being equitable, treating others fairly and equitably, no matter the circumstances. This does not mean equally, but rather fairly, being equitable. So forgiving. This is an extremely important behavior, extremely important to servant leadership, but also to your individual health, to your both physical and psychological health. Johns Hopkins, in their research, has shown a direct relationship between forgiveness and health. There are stories that I've described and do in our program about individuals who have had PTSD, for instance, for decades, and finally forgave people that contributed to that, and they recovered from their PTSD, for instance. It's very powerful. Research has shown that by forgiving, you have lower risk of heart attack, improved cholesterol levels, improved sleep, reduced anxiety and depression, as well as reduced stress and pain. Behaviors that are involved in this act of forgiveness. It is an active process, meaning you need to make a decision to do it. It involves compassion and empathy. So even if someone cuts you off on the road during busy traffic hours or something, and rather than getting mad, that is even a form of forgiveness where you just let it go. Perhaps they are in a hurry. Maybe they have someone sick at home. Who knows what it might be. So you have compassion, even in small examples like that. Truly, forgiveness can set you free, as they say, meaning, again, psychologically, physically. Reflection, let go of expectations of individuals. So if you essentially reflect on people's behavior, perhaps don't have expectations that are too high, where if someone lets you down, you don't forgive them because, again, you just had these perhaps unrealistic expectations. People make mistakes. They're not perfect. And so when they do things that are imperfect, we forgive. And then finally, to forgive yourself, which perhaps can be one of the hardest things to do. Trusting. Trusting can also be rather challenging at times, especially if negative things have happened to you in the past. Walker wrote an article about trust in the military and specifically the Army, and how to avoid not being trusted for even simple things like if you see something wrong in the Army, for example, with someone's uniform, and you don't say anything, and then they realize later maybe they get reprimanded or something, and they're like, hey, why didn't my teammates let me know about this? That erodes trust. There is a model here that I'll go through rather quickly. Again, I go through this in more detail in the program, but there is a way that can help you decide, should I trust someone? So first off, you as the truster, how risk tolerant are you? Well, if you're high risk tolerant, in other words, if you accept that there is risk and you have, you're willing to accept higher and higher risk, then perhaps you trust individuals more if you're willing to take upon more risk, because there is risk associated with trust to varying degrees. If you're well adjusted, and if you have higher level of power, in other words, for instance, in an organization, if you have a position, let's say you're the CEO of an organization, you have a considerable relative power within the organization, you are in a position where you can trust more because, for instance, you have less of a chance of being fired than if you are on the opposite end of that spectrum, where you're the lowest level individual in an organization, and so many different individuals could perhaps make a recommendation that you be fired. You have low relative power, so it's harder to trust individuals when you're in that position. Various situational factors can include, for instance, how secure do the parties feel. The more secure you feel with each other, the more willing people are to trust each other. If you have more similarities between you two, if your interests are aligned, these are factors that contribute to more trust. If the person that you want to trust has more benevolent concern, in other words, they're more caring, they're more concerned about the situation and so forth, we can trust them more. If they're capable of what they're doing, and also have they shown predictability and integrity in the past, then perhaps you can trust them. Or if they haven't, then you consider or maybe be more cautious and distrusting of them. And then also, if you don't have good communication with one another, then there's definitely some concerns. To be collaborative means willing to work together. Ineffective collaboration, research has shown that it has adverse impact. For instance, in the healthcare industry, it has adverse impact on patients. If you don't collaborate, there's increased stress among nurses. It can exacerbate existing challenges, make them worse if you don't collaborate. Late diagnoses were found when there was ineffective collaboration as well as inadequate care. So there's a specific example of how that's impacted in the nursing and in healthcare. Competencies, patient-centered care, interprofessional communication, participatory leadership, conflict resolution. These are all things that occur in a collaborative environment. And transparency, very critical. Transparency is part of servant leadership that we get into in greater detail. Being respectful, not gossiping. So this is a very specific example of how to be respectful of individuals, and also is very important to understand because gossiping is very prevalent and can be very, very harmful. Research has shown that negative gossip can lead to lower self-esteem, lower levels of perceived insider status, meaning if there's more gossiping, if you're participating in more gossiping, it just may be perceived that you are at a lower level within your community that this is occurring, and lower, for instance, organizational citizenship behavior. Other behaviors are influenced by negative gossiping. There's a correlation between the two. And then equitable behavior. What is this? Well, equitable behavior is not treating again equally. Arguably, no one wants to be treated equally as others. If you earn a higher degree, if you work harder than others, whatever it may be, you may want to be treated a bit differently than those that don't. If someone's a criminal and you are not, do you want to be treated equally as they are? Probably not. But equitable treatment is where basically, for instance, if you work harder, if you do better than others within the workplace, if you don't commit a crime, whatever it may be, right? You want to be treated more fairly. And then finally, just very briefly again here, behaviors, review hiring and promotion methods. So within the workplace, if you want to see if people are being treated equitable, well, you look at how the hiring practices and selection process. Is it a evidence-based process where bias is controlled, or are people just randomly kind of just because someone might happen to like them or they're a relative or who knows what? Not that there's anything wrong with these things, but if they're done for the wrong reasons and people are promoted without really looking at from an objective perspective the best person to promote, then it's not equitable treatment. So these examples are examples of kinship, specific behaviors. I do hope you learned something, and again, we do describe these in much greater detail and work on them in the Servant Leadership 2.0 Training and Development Program. Thank you very much.